The three primary drivers of any reselling business are who you know, what you have, and what you do. In the previous two videos I've uploaded on this channel in the past 2 days, I discussed networking as well as inventory management. And today we're going to talk about the biggest component of all, action. So this video does again complement the previous two uploads quite well. So be sure to loop back to those two in addition to watching this video if you haven't already. Also, before we dive in, it is March 1st, so unfortunately we did not hit the 800 subscriber mark by March 1st, which was my goal. However, no reason to not hit the like and subscribe buttons now. It would help me out tremendously and mean a lot in continuing this daily upload adventure. So with no further ado, you have now taken a look at the network that you've established, the people that you know, and you've also correlated that with the inventory that you currently possess or manage. So when we think about managing our inventory like curating, then you know that you have like various channels to offload all of that. But none of that really matters if you don't actually do the work. So today we're going to focus on how you can build some healthy habits and routines so that you can continue to be successful or start becoming successful here in the Pokemon space at large. So the first thing is first, a couple key considerations that I want to outline initially are just like the main thing separating people from being successful in this space versus not is actually not knowledge asymmetry. It's actually just work. So the majority of people that I know that have large positions in any given product, whether it's Pokemon or otherwise, and they're not currently reaping financial benefits in all of this like booming, territory that we're in, it's just because they're sitting on the bench with their hands in their pockets. And so today I want to talk a little bit about my personal experience with doing that type of thing and what I'm doing differently today in growing a multi-six-figure business. So back in the 2020/21 boom, which I talk about a lot, and I think it's just helpful because this is a clear-cut situation of what not to do. I was one of those people who had a big grading pile of cards that wanted to be sent off to PSA. However, after the shutdown in 2021 and the eventual reopening, I thought that the grading situation was just too expensive. So I was like in the I'm gonna wait crowd, right? So what I ended up doing is I didn't send the cards when it was the lottery system for 100 or 50. And then I initially didn't send when bulk eventually reopened at like, what was it, $30 a card either. I just kept sitting on the sidelines and waiting for my chance to finally come around. What actually ended up happening is many people turned over their entire inventories multiple times in the time frame that I was just sitting there passively waiting and not really accomplishing much. And so I lost out on a great deal of opportunity by just not doing the work. Now, all of this is underwritten by mathematics and making sure that the cards you have actually make sense to send off at a given price range. But that's kind of like the talking point right now is make sure you do the math. Whether or not you can afford to send a card to PSA or CGC or otherwise at any given price range is just a determinant of mathematics. So make sure that you look back on previous videos on this channel and figure out how you can calculate if it makes sense or not. But I will say that like the biggest asymmetry in this space is just the willingness to actually follow through. A lot of people have no issue with just on a free Sunday, they'll sit down and put up a ton of listings on their eBay store or whatever. But then Monday through Saturday rolls around and they're not doing anything to upkeep their business. They're not sorting through cards. They're not reaching out and sourcing. And so their business just becomes stagnant where it's just like, it's a snail crawling on a log. It's just barely getting by, right? It's just waiting for some bird to swoop down and eat it. And you don't want to find yourself in that position. You can best avoid that position by being disciplined and doing the work. What I don't think you should do is if you have 10 cards to list, we've talked about like the consistent daily uploads on eBay. That's kind of like a thing that the algorithm prefers or has historically preferred. But it's like what I would not recommend is if you only have 10 cards to list, I wouldn't just do one a day for 10 days. What you should be doing is like listing those cards and immediately finding more cards to list and sell. And so there's kind of like a fine line between having inventory to manage versus building up a death pile that you never do anything with. So again, like doing the work is the primary thing here. And I would say that that is like the greatest barrier to entry for most people in most walks of life in general, whether it's fitness, nutrition, business, financial literacy at large. It's just doing the stuff. So finding out the information and then doing what makes sense. And again, this is like a topic that I've talked about ad nauseum on this channel, but it is one that I really want to hit home. There's nothing keeping you out of the opportunity except your own preconceptions. So once you have your inventory and you understand like what you're best going to do with it based on the network that you have established over time, you have to follow through with that. So even if it means that, you've got kids and you have to go to your office and sort cards during nap time or whatever, it's like, don't sit there and doom scroll on TikTok or Instagram or whatever. Be sure that you're actually going down and doing the things that are going to result in dollar bills hitting your bank account, because that makes way more sense than the instant gratification of doom scrolling. And I pick on social media a lot on this channel in this regard, because it's like, if you sit there and look at your screen time per day spent on social media or even apps like this, YouTube, it's probably tremendously high for the vast majority of people that are just like here right now. And I don't want to like shame you for engaging in social media. As a matter of fact, I appreciate you for supporting this channel. However, make sure that you're balancing that with something productive too. So if you're putting a video like this up, I don't have any graphics popping up. You've probably taken a second to look at the stuff that's in the background behind me. But it's like, beyond that, it's the words that are important, right? So the words that I'm saying are far more important than the things you're seeing here. And that's why, like, usually I'm just driving around on this channel, because that is the important idea, is like the words coming out. And so make sure that you're doing the stuff. It's like, you can't want one thing, but then do something that's a direct conflict against it happening. And that's what I see largely in the world. I see a lot of people that are in financially compromised situations, but they're not really doing anything to change their situation. They're just going to their 9 to 5, coming home and watching Netflix. And you can do a lot more with your time than you think. And as a matter of fact, right now, running this business that I have currently, it's like, I'm waking up multiple hours before any other person in my day job that I know. And that's so that I can come down and sort cards, get listings up, get photos for the week taken. And like, I'm doing the work. Like, I think that if it was just a matter of my primary income, my family and I might be in a similar situation where we're thinking like, oh man, it's just tight to live. Like, it takes us a while to save up for a vacation or whatever. And frankly, my wife and I haven't been on a vacation in like 5 years. But it's like, it takes time to save for that, or like it takes time to get the money saved up for a big repair on your household or whatever. But it's like, knowing that it takes time to build money and build like, even just capital for your business, it means that the more work you do, the greater you can offset the time that it takes to do that. So doing more work means you have to wait less time for the thing that you want to have happen. And so make sure that you're setting up a system that works. And the system that's been working for me is taking a massive amount of photos on a day like Sunday, today, at the time of me recording this. That way I have like 10 to 15 items to list on my eBay store every day throughout the week. And again, I'm trying to be better about only putting the items on my eBay store that make sense there based on the network that I have. As a matter of fact, I just got done, previous to recording this video, packaging a box of slabs intended to be sent off to James at Z&G Emporium. And I have a collection that has some sealed products coming inbound, and I'm going to communicate with Sealed Shiz Consignments to see if those are items that make sense on his platform to be sent off, so that I don't sit here and just do a bunch of unnecessary work and waiting for nothing. So those are the types of things. And again, I'm trying not to just talk the talk. I'm trying to walk the walk and do the things that I'm telling you guys about, because I firmly believe that it's what's going to work, for me at least. And if you curate a situation at all remotely similar to mine, it should theoretically work for you, or at least work better than what you're currently doing, especially if that's nothing. So I guess the ultimate takeaway of today is like, have some set time frames where you're doing the things. Obviously, if you're running an eBay store, you're going to get messages sporadically throughout the day about items, and some of those messages are probably more serious than others in terms of like buyer incentive or the intentionality of the buyer actually purchasing that said item. However, it is your job as an eBay seller to interface with the customer service aspect of things. That's going to help you grow your store optimally. So what you want to do is I prefer to front load the work. So I begin my day, I hit the ground running. So I'm a 1 alarm guy. Historically, I used to hit the snooze button, or I'd have a backup alarm in case I like overslept or whatever. Well, I just made a big change in my life a few months ago where I just set 1 alarm, and when it goes off, I sit up. The first thing I do before I even leave my bedroom is I purchase all the labels from items that sold overnight. And then I immediately, before breakfast, come to my office and I pull all those cards from the inventory, get them packaged and ready to be shipped out. Then I actually get myself ready for the day. So then I leave for my 9 to 5 job, and immediately after that, I go to the post office and drop off the items because that completes the circle. And I'm only interfacing with customer service in moments of my dead time. So what I'm not doing is I'm doing my best to limit things like interrupting my family dinner to interface with customers. I am not going to be interfacing with customers on eBay during like my key work hours at my job, because that's, being a bad employee, and that's not my MO. And then, any time of consequence where I'm actually having like a personal conversation or I'm connecting with a human in real life, I'm making sure to keep those walls separated. As a matter of fact, something I've started doing is when I get home from my job and I'm interfacing with my family, I've been trying to do my best to keep my cell phone in a complete different room, because I don't want to be like losing those moments of my time, because I value that so much. With that said, though, I'm not finding it difficult to get the jobs done that I need to do. I'm waking up early, and then if I have additional work to do that kind of supersedes that time in the morning, the hour or two that I give myself prior to going to work, I'll stay up a little bit later. And yeah, that's a bummer. My wife and I like to go to bed at the same time so that we can be together and hang out and stuff like that. But she understands that right now we're in a time of our life where we're making some short-term sacrifices with the incentive of long-term gain in a fiscal sense. And so she is, we are aligned as a marriage, that we're giving some sacrifices, or we're making some sacrifices right now, that hopefully we won't be making forever. But with that said, it's like in 2025, I talked to you about how I broke the $100,000 threshold. I finalized my numbers for the year. I ended up doing somewhere around like 103,000 and some change. And with that said, I was only working like maybe 5 hours a week on Pokemon. So I've at least doubled that now. I'm actually, instead of just getting up and doing 20 minutes worth of work every day, I'm doing 1 to 2 hours of work a day. And then in the evenings, there's usually 1 or 2 evenings where I have to come down and get some things done as well. So add a couple hours to that. And then on Sundays, that's my big like prep work day, so that I can set myself up for success throughout the duration of the week. And that's turned into another hour or two. Add filming these videos, averaging probably 10 minutes per video, and I'm uploading 7 days a week. I'm probably looking somewhere around like the 20-hour range if I just had to spitball that. And so I'm effectively like 4xing my amount of work that I'm doing. But I do think that that's going to have an asymmetric payoff in terms of like where my business stands at the end of the year. All that is to say also, with geminspectorllc starting up, I'm now starting to get orders rolling in. So shout out to everybody who's helped out with growing and starting that business. I want to give a shout out to Danazard TCG. He was the first person to submit an order to me. And so I should be receiving and processing his cards very soon. So shout out to him for showing support to the business. And hopefully I can help him grow and make some sound decisions with the cards he's sending in as well. But the thing to note here is like, number one, we're just talking about discipline. And the second factor here that we're considering is just time management. So you're going to be miserable if you are trying to like multitask at work all day long, like running a business and doing your job. Probably not a good idea. Also, you're going to be detracting from the relationship with your family or loved ones or friends if you are constantly trying to like do your business in times where you should be interfacing with your loved ones. And so what you need to do is, instead of vegging out on the couch, and whatever else you might be doing, again, that's the one I always pick on. I don't know why. That's just like the low-hanging fruit that pops into my brain. I think that a lot of people, specifically in America, just do spend a lot of time sitting on the couch. And that's why TV has historically been known as like America's pastime or whatever. But it's like, even if you're going to the gym, like that's ultimately something that I consider to be a productive time. Well, if you're on the gym, if you're getting like a 5-minute warm up on the treadmill, or if you want to do some cardio after you're done lifting, you can be doing listings then. It's not weird. I do it all the time. As a matter of fact, sometimes, like you may overestimate the amount that other people care about what you're doing. And so I think if anyone sees you doing eBay listings on the treadmill, no one's going to mind really. Probably it's not in good taste to like have your 90-day total sitting on your screen propped up on the treadmill or whatever. That would be kind of tacky. But it's like you can do the work while you're doing other things, so long as they're not detracting from key components of your life. And I know, like for me personally, like going to the gym is a big decompression opportunity mentally. And then I'm also just kind of like a high-strung person, so having like a physical outlet like lifting or jujitsu, those are like net benefits for me and my health and wellness overall. But with that said, I'm probably not going to be doing eBay listings in between sets of like bench press, but while you're on the treadmill, it's not a big deal. And so finding these, and again, like with the content creation, I'm largely doing that in times where I'm just driving from point A to point B in no routine basis. I'm just recording whenever I find the time. And then right now it's like, at the time of me recording this, like my children are taking their nap. And so I'm just doing work now. And then when they wake up, I'll go hang out with my family. And it's not really detracting from anything consequential. And so there's these types of payoffs that you just have to consider. And when you actually sit down and make the plan, it makes all of this stuff conceptually way less intimidating. And I think that once you sit down and just like schedule a day or schedule a week for yourself, and then you adhere to that schedule throughout the duration of the week, you're going to find that like you do have time. And as a matter of fact, you have way more of it than you might suspect. And that isn't like, you shouldn't look at that as like, oh, you're ashamed of your past decisions or whatever. It's like you just became empowered because you added more structure to your life. And with that added structure, you implement discipline and your ball's going to be rolling really quickly. And I think that, one of my parting or closing thoughts here is that I forget who said this. Maybe it was like on the Iced Coffee Hour. It's a podcast by Graham Stephan. He had someone way more successful than me on, and he was saying that like a consistency that he's seen in successful people that he's known throughout his life was that successful people move way faster than you expect. And I think that that's something worth thinking about. Nobody would be poo-pooing you if you intake a collection and then it takes you a month to like process those 500 cards or whatever. But you're going to give yourself a tip of the hat if you know that you got that same collection in and you processed it in a week. Every card that was gradable was sent off. Every card that wasn't gradable was photographed and listed. And then maybe you want to give some away, right? Maybe you have like a family member who's into Pokemon, and so you give all like the V cards that aren't like super consequential Pokemon, like more Pekko or whatever. Maybe just give that to a loved one, right? So those are all like types of options or whatever, but it's like you can turn a job like that into a month-long job or a multi-week job, or you can just bite the bullet and attack that thing with a plan, and then you're going to get your money back way faster, which you can then put into more collections. And the more you can do that, the more you can turn over your money per calendar year, the more opportunity to make money you will have. So that's kind of like the key takeaway today is free yourself, free your schedule by making a plan, and then stick to it. And I promise you within a couple of weeks or months, you are going to see this pay off tremendously in your favor. And it's actually fantastic. So that's kind of my general idea here. Hopefully that all checks out with you. I would love to hear your opinions down in the comment section below. Again, please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and check me out at geminspector.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.